Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Kayfa halakum jami'an. Welcome you all to the last episode of, or the final episode to season one. And we thank Allah Jalla wa'ala for allowing us to reach here to the Fajr Club with my co-host. This is Nafis Abu Zaid.
This is your brother Aqil Ingram.
This is your brother Abdul Haq Baker.
And what we're going to do is we're going to let Brother Abdul Haq Baker, since Allah Jalla wa'ala allowed him to put this excellent and beautiful framework together, to allow a demonstration to give us a little bit, if you want, a little bit explanation to it, so that we can bring everyone around to full circle, because we're on the fourth stage. So hopefully,
Yes.
Abdul Haq, you can go ahead and take it.
Jazakallah khair. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What everyone is looking at before them is the framework that I developed and it evolved during my PhD. Now you'll see that you've heard us discuss throughout this season the founding, the youthful, the adult and the mature stages. And at the bottom, you've heard us talk as well about abstract knowledge and actualized knowledge. So you'll see that's going across the bottom. Now, the four blue circles that you're seeing in there, you're seeing that is data, information, knowledge, wisdom. So you'll see as you mature, you reach the mature stage, that you hit that peak of wisdom. And you'll see as you're going down, you'll see that knowledge equates at the adult stage. You'll see information that is there at the youthful stage. You'll see data. And when I looked at this in my studies, and I looked at actual communities and our lives and how we were progressing and the sort of youthful exuberance and everything, I felt that this framework, it fit like a glove. Now, again, it fit like a glove from a perspective that I wanted this to be foundational and run parallel with the Islamic understanding, which Brother Nafis is going to talk about. As you know, he's come from the religious perspective and constructs all the way throughout. And Brother Aqil has basically merged the two, the more academic framework and nuances with the deen. And I think to be honest, I think that we've really come together well as co-hosts on this. We didn't plan it like this, but I thank Allah for blessing it that we've been able to work interchangeably around this. And so looking at that framework there, no one should become overwhelmed by it because we've spoken about it throughout the previous 9 episodes. Now, what I do want to do though, is to place a context on the data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, because it's very important to understand that through these progressive stages, and we'll be able to identify within ourselves, within our communities as well, and others, how they've moved as they've developed as Muslims, or not, as the case may be. So, for example, I'm looking at my definition here, which this definition was taken from an altogether different field of studies, just like the initial framework, and I've merged them together. So data, for example, comes through research, creation, gathering, and discovery. I'll repeat that. Data comes about through research, creation, gathering, and discovery. That's that first stage. So it's gathering. You're acquiring information about the deen and everything like this. Information now, the next stage, has context. Data is turned into information by organizing it so that we can easily draw conclusions from that. Data is also turned into information by presenting it, such as making it visual or auditory. So you know the stage when many of us, we wanted to show our Islam. We wanted to become more apparent, and we became visual to others, and others became visual to us, the abstract stage. Now, remember, this is not coming from a religious paradigm, but I brought it in because it fits so much to the case studies that I was looking at in my community in Brixton and beyond. The next stage now, knowledge. This is not the Islamic definition of knowledge. This is the knowledge according to this paradigmatic framework. Knowledge has the complexity of experience, which come about by seeing it from different perspectives. This is why training and education are difficult. One cannot count on one person's knowledge transferring to another. Knowledge is built from scratch by the learner through experience. Information is static, but knowledge is dynamic as it lives within us. So that's there. Now, I think you're following me on that. When you hear these definitions that are there and we apply them within the Western context of the societies we live in, some of us should be able to start seeing similarities and variances with those who went against some of these dynamics. Move into wisdom, and then move into wisdom, and then I'll give the conclusion there. So far we've looked at data, information, knowledge. The final one at the mature stage. Wisdom is the ultimate level of understanding. As with knowledge, wisdom operates within us. We can share our experiences that create the building blocks for wisdom. However, it needs to be communicated with even more understanding of the personal context of our audience than with knowledge sharing. That's wisdom, the understanding, the empathy through experience. And then the conclusion here, bringing them all together, data and information deal with the past. They are based on the gathering of facts and adding context. Knowledge deals with the present. It becomes a part of us and enables us to perform. However, when we gain wisdom, we start dealing with the future as we are now able to vision and design for what will be rather than for what is or was. I hand it back to you, Brother Nafis.
No, nicely put. Alhamdulillah, Brother Dr. Abdul Haq Baker explained to us the framework that Allah Jalla wa'ala allowed him to put together, and hopefully we all can extract and take some benefit from it. I'm going to pass that baton right over to our brother Aqil Ingram, inshallah, and he will go ahead and elaborate.
Well, I mean, really, my thoughts match your own thus far. In that, when we're thinking about becoming Islamically mature, then we enter into a space where we realize that we're not operating in some form of a binary function. It's not yes, no, right, wrong, on, off. You realize that in many areas there's actually a spectrum. There's a spectrum of color, and when you enter into maturity, I believe you begin to see that spectrum of color and what options are. And you begin to think and function of the space of not so much right and wrong, what is more right,
Oh,
what is more wrong, what's less right, what's less wrong, and what is most applicable to what we have in front of us in the present, and what is most applicable to what will be occurring in the future. I believe in the Islamically mature phase, you build tolerance, and you also become past humility. You become reserved. You build a reservation. You're not in need of necessarily taking immediate action when immediate action is not necessary, and you're willing to buy time in order to place yourself and others in the best position for a possible future that you can envision. I believe this is what begins to occur once you enter into a state of Islamic maturity.
no. My thoughts on this is I wanted to, on the flyer we post there, what is being mature in Islam? I wanted to highlight this point because, the scholars from both past and present, they talk about maturity. They talk about wisdom, and they have their own ta'rifat, which is known as definitions that they give on different occasions for maturity. So when do a person know that he matured? Now, in line of what Dr. Haq Baker have done with this excellent framework, is that I believe that there is the stages that a person is going through from the founding stage up until reaching the mature stage. So there is a development process that's taking place. So according to his study and research, he believed that once a person reached the fourth stage, they have grown to some extent. They have learned, whether or not it's from the experience, whatever they was able, whether the information they gathered, etc. However, the scholars of the past, they have gave a beautiful definition for hikmah, which is the term which is normally used or commonly used for wisdom in Islam. And hikmah is used in many different contexts in the Quran. So they gave the definition, two definitions that comes to mind is that hikmah is hiya muwafiqatun lis-sawab, right? Hiya muwafiqatun lis-sawab, that which is in agreement with that which is correct, okay? That which is in harmony with that which is correct, okay? Another one is the famous one that we constantly hear in Islam, as far as the definition of wisdom is wad'u shay fi mawdu'ihi, or wad'u li-shay fi mawdu'ihi, placing things in its proper context or in its proper place, putting things in its right place. Sometimes when we think of wisdom, especially outside of Islam, is we think of wisdom connected to experience, and we connect those two together. However, in Islam, it doesn't hold that ground. And the reason I want to show you is that when you look in the Quran, you see that Suleiman was young, right? And the judgment took place, and Suleiman's judgment was actually correct. And Allah Jalla wa Ala says, فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا Suleiman wa Dawood, right? وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا عِلْمًا وَحُكْمًا, right? So Allah, or وَالْحُكْمَ وَالْإِلْمَ, right? Allah Jalla wa Ala says in Surah An-Naml, the 20th chapter of the Quran, and indeed we have made Suleiman understood the issue, right? Over his father, Dawood, right? And even though he was young, the point of me bringing is this: because he was young, he didn't have too much experience. But when this situation have came, he had the correct understanding, which shows us that hikmah is not necessarily confined to experience.
Right.
That was the point of me bringing this out. So Allah said, indeed, we gave both of them. We gave them hukmah, right judgment, and we gave them knowledge, right? So hikmah, as Allah says, yu'tal hikmata man yasha. It's connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, right? He gives hikmah to whom he wills. And then he says, وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And whomsoever Allah Jalla wa Ala gives this hikmah to, this wisdom to, he have much abundance. I will go ahead and stop there, inshallah.
Well, I'd just like to just add, you remind me of another definition of wisdom that may be beneficial for us in our audience.
No.
And it's what Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, may Allah bestow mercy upon the soul, has mentioned, that wisdom is فِعْلُ مَا يَنْبَغِي عَلَى وَجْهِ الَّذِي يَنْبَغِي فِي وَقْتِ الَّذِي يَنْبَغِي. That wisdom is to do what is appropriate in a way that is appropriate at a time that is appropriate.
So those three things again, repeat that, brother.
I'll repeat that, huh?
No.
Wisdom is to do what is appropriate in a way that is appropriate at a time that is appropriate.
Now, to add to Abdul Haq Baker point of view on the framework so that they can connect together, I believe that with that experience that the process that you went through, it should have developed you to a point where so you are able to discern between what is correct information, the information in its proper context, the utilization of that information, and how to actually make it applicable to yourself and to others. So I believe that connects in. It's not necessarily meaning that what you experience is going to give you the proper understanding, but it should, because some people experience things and don't learn the lesson. So for me, that's not maturity. If you went through something and you don't take the lesson from it, then what? You didn't gain anything, right? You gain only if you take the lesson from it, if you took the lesson from it. So then your experience and actually can count and weigh towards your wisdom. That's what I wanted to bring.
And I think what you both said, mashallah, encapsulates everything that I was saying, but you've put the religious wrapping around it all. And as we see here, knowledge is that which is acted upon. Up until that point, it's information. So, and that's really important to know. But then when we move to the stage of maturity and wisdom, as you've both highlighted, there's something we need to consider, because we're talking now on an individual basis. We have to look at the question on whether the communities that we are from or with have reached that stage of maturity and wisdom. And if they have they articulated and actualized those three characteristics that Brother Aqil has just so eloquently highlighted? Also, we can go back to what you said as well, Brother Nafis, with regards to knowledge. Have we as individuals and collectively acquired what is knowledge according to the definition, the religious definition that you've given. And the reason I'm asking these questions now, if you remember the framework we told there's periods of reflection. That starts at the adult stage and the mature stage. And collectively, as communities, I asked the question, have we even embarked upon self-reflection collectively based on those aspects of knowledge and wisdom, adult stage and mature stage, mature phase? I'm not sure that we have, because if we had done, would our communities be in the conditions that they are at the moment? And then when we contrast and compare with other communities who may not have consciously gone through these particular processes here, we see that progress and development has happened in some of those communities. And I'm not just talking socio-economically, I'm talking from a socio-religious perspective only at this point. So those are questions there. I'll articulate them, I'll reiterate them again with regards to the three characteristics that Aqil has highlighted. How are we standing as communities from the point of hikmah, religiously, wisdom, the socio-economic, socio-religious paradigm that I've mentioned? How do we stand against those three characteristics collectively now? Let's not talk individually, because everyone would say, I'm at this stage, I feel I've achieved this, this resonates with me, that resonates with me. And then the second question, how does it reflect? Same question, but as it relates to knowledge, according to the definition and the religious context that you've highlighted, Brother Nafis.
As far as I'm understanding collectively, right? People are on different levels, but what is understood to me is that no one can actually reach the level of wisdom that Ibn al-Qayyim gave in that definition without knowledge. So without having the proper knowledge to understand the circumstance, understand the situation, when the proper time, when the proper place, when to put in, you have to understand the condition, right? So it would take a level of knowledge to have. And I think that collectively, depending on what we have been exposed to in our respective communities in regards to that knowledge, will play a direct role in how we apply it. So in some communities, when you talk about them progressing on a social religious aspect, then you have to go back to their educational background, the knowledge that they was actually invested into them, which will allow them at that time to do and to progress better than other communities that don't flourish on a collective scale.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that will go back again to the educational part, the foundational part of what the individuals have learned, or you want to say the second stage, the knowledge part, and then they can actually move to that stage of being, of that wisdom stage that Ibn al-Qayyim gave the definition that Aqil brought to us. Well,
let me jump in here. Let me jump in here for a moment. And if we have to look at an assessment of the West broadly, I would say that collectively we are beyond the foundational stage. I would also say collectively we haven't reached maturity yet. And I would say that for the most part, we are between the youthful and adult stages at this present time. And because, and I say between the youthful and adult stages, regardless of a person's age, right?
Yes.
Regardless of a person's age. But I believe also that is some of the struggle, or I would even venture off to say a large part of the struggle that we're seeing creating tension collectively between our communities. It's that struggle between the youthful stage and the adult stage. And we have some that are beginning to enter into this adult stage, and others are seeing the adult stage as an other because they're in the youthful phase.
No,
exactly what we discussed, if you remember, a few weeks ago when we were talking about the younger, more exuberant at the youthful stage, looking at those of us who possibly moved to the adult stage and looking at disdain. There wasn't that inculcation of humility, learning from elders. And again, we're not talking about age here. We're talking in deen with regards to learning and everything. So, Brother Aqil, what you've said is emphatic. That is exactly what we're looking at. And I'm really pleased, can I say, that we've actually identified a stage or two stages between which we, as a still relatively young Sunni, Salafi communities, and those who are not Salafi can also resonate, find resonance with this, being between the youthful and the adult stage, being between, let's say, information and knowledge, because we're seeing that the communities are not progressing collectively in particular areas religiously where we should have been. Because had that been the case, I want you to look very carefully. If we had reached, and I'm glad, Brother Nafis, you'd said this as well, Aqil agrees with you, and I agree, that collectively we haven't, I want to say we haven't embedded that mature stage yet. Some of us may have reached it, but as collectively community, our communities haven't reached that, because if they had, listen to the definition, the conclusive part again. When we gain wisdom, we start dealing with the future, as we are now able to vision and design for what will be rather than for what is or was. So what does that mean? We can't see the future. Only Allah knows the future. But based on experiences collectively, individually, surely we should be planning and navigating the younger generation, the next generations that are coming up, away from the pitfalls that we have experienced, and moving them in a direction where they can continue to grow and nurture themselves, and we nurture them very comprehensively. But it's not all our fault. It's not all of the, if you want to say, elders' fault in that regard, because we are also dealing with, like we spoke about last week, new challenges that weren't there when we were growing. And that's the social media and the connection to the social media. We're looking at things that we've never seen before. So when we're trying to stand at a point of maturity and wisdom, how can you impart wisdom in totality into a realm that never previously existed? Now, I'm not saying that carte blanche, because we know at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, as I was saying in the khutbah today, there was no social media, but we have the etiquettes of self-accountability. We have the etiquettes of communication, the conduct, taking account of your soul and everything like this. We had all of that, and that can still be applied in today's time with social media. It can be applied in the future. The deen is for all times and all places, as we know. But now there is a limitation, because from the perspective of wisdom, we have to look back, draw experience and examples from the past, and we need to transpose them to the future, where our younger generation is already traversing, is already walking. That's the challenge that we have at the point of this, at the stage of maturity and wisdom at the moment. I don't know if you both will agree with me on that.
Abdul Haq, one thing that is very vital when you mention the time of the Prophet ﷺ is that they had a role model. And I think we harped on this about a couple of shows back, but I want you to understand how integral that is. Having someone embody these principles, having someone in front of you showing you the way is extremely important. And collectively, we have been seeing throughout the communities a struggle for leadership, a struggle for what is considered to be the right way to go, right? And in terms of that internal conflict that we've seen taking place, because they was either struggling between the, as Aqil said, the youthful stage and the adult stage, which they wasn't contextualizing the proper knowledge that they had. So they was worrying about who was going to take this leadership role. So there was a lot of things that was left and that was neglected, such as these things we're talking about, to reach that mature stage, such as having that role model, such as having those beautiful conduct, such as these things being, vocalized and being understood. Like, yo, you really need this if you want to succeed social, religious, or economic, you really need this. Not just what we're seeing now in the West, whereas though we see people occupying lofty positions or occupying positions of office, but yet their character actually contradicts the station or the mandate of that office. And they're not worrying about ethics or morality anymore. It's just that I am who I am. I fulfilled this slot, and that's what it is. It reminds me of a narration where the Prophet ﷺ said the time going to come where people going to be take occupying positions and they're not worthy of it or deserving of it. It's not a hak for them to have it. You know what I'm saying? But they'll be occupying those positions. So in that collective community, I see that that internal conflict is over leadership, which destroyed this because it caused a lot of things to be neglected. Another point is the fact that we don't have role models. We do, but we don't. And
Yes.
what I mean that we do, yes, we have the ulama, yes, we have people who are learned from amongst us who have embodied some of those characteristics within themselves if we allow ourselves to open up to them. But somehow with this internal conflict, we can't take from brothers, quote unquote, that might have these characteristics or have reached this educational academic stage, right? Which can help us. We can't take from them. So they have blocked us off from that. You understand what I'm saying? So it caused this conflict for us to not reach that mature stage. Last but not least, I wanted to mention this point. Just because you have been in Islam 30 years, 40 years, I know Aqil touched on this, you touched on this as well, it does not necessitate where you at on this framework. Your age does not necessitate or dictates where you at on this framework because you can be 60 years old and you could have spent 30 years of your life in Islam, but if you didn't have the proper understanding of Islam, you probably be at the finding stage.
Exactly.
So it doesn't necessitate put you at the level of maturity.
Yes.
Again, you have to learn from the past to prepare for the future.
Right.
Learn from the past to prepare for the future. Go ahead, Sean.
Beautiful, Brother Nafis. I'm going to let Aqil jump in. Everything you've articulated there is on point, and I'm glad the summary that you gave there was exactly what I had in mind with regards to those looking at it. You can't look because you've got grey in your beard that you're at the mature stage. As you said, you could be at the founding stage and 40 years a Muslim. Very, very pertinent point. Sorry, Brother Aqil, go ahead.
Definitively and without doubt, we are pioneering here in the West. We are writing history as we speak, whether we realize it or not. And most people that are impacting history at the time that they don't actually know who they are, and they don't know the way that they're impacting history real time, right? It's just something that people realize after the fact and in hindsight. But I say this because the fact that one is, or collectively we are pioneering, and the fact that we are in a space that has not been seen before. Um, I would say that's relatively normal and expected, um, because insofar as civilization is advancing, then civilization will always be entering into spaces where they were not before because civilization is developing. So, because of that, um, we do gather lesson from past and present, but it is okay to assess probable, possible futures and then aim for what is most appropriate for us and commit to that. As Prophet Sa'id stated, "Saddidu wa qaribu," right? You aim for the goal and then you get as close to it as you possibly can.
No, I'm with you just to ducktail, as you say, behind you. I think honestly, what he's saying is those challenges that presents themselves because we are pioneering, we're in this pioneer stage. It might not be necessarily something that is clear cut from the past that we can draw from in this new developed world. So we have to be willing to actually aim with those principles in mind to be able to reach those challenges. Hope I was able to understand exactly what you were saying right there, Akil. But
Absolutely.
I honestly believe that again, we have to ask ourselves, who is the role model for our respective communities? And the reason why I'm harping on this a lot is because it's going to shape our understanding in which way we're supposed to go. If we don't have a role model, right? We don't have something that we can look at as a beacon of. Henceforth, we always use the famous statement: "It's kitab with sunnah, the sunnah, sunnah, sunnah," right? But then it's not understood just that carte blanche, like you were saying. That's my role model, the sunnah. But if you're ignorant of the sunnah, that can't be your role model. You understand? If you have no knowledge of it, then how can that be your role model? You're just claiming something that you basically don't understand. How can you follow something you don't know? So again, role model is extremely integral to embody some of these things we're talking about. And to reach that level of maturity, it's going to take the tawfiq from Allah. I believe, whether individually or collectively, it's going to take the tawfiq of Allah for us to reach it. Now, there are small pockets within each community that have developed significantly, right? But on a large scale, the Muslims are regressing, not progressing. You see? On a large scale, the Muslims are regressing. They're not progressing. But this has already been prophesied that was going to happen. You understand? So we know that we have to take all of this in this proper context. Now,
I agree.
Yeah, go ahead. Now, the difference of opinions, those difference of opinions have a pretext for people who say, okay, we should be able to sit at the table now and say, okay, let's open up this opinion. You have this opinion. I have that opinion, right? Not every opinion is supposed to be followed. But what is the guideline for that? Allah gave us that in His book, and He gave us that in the Sunnah, but it depends on who we respect. Because if we don't take from your scholars or we don't take from your learned men, we're not going to listen to your point of view. You understand? So that right there is going to be like, you understand, it's going to be crazy and hectic. Go ahead, brother.
2 points. I think it's very important that you're raising this about role models and leading by example. And Jazakallah khair. I think as we're on the final episode of this particular season, what we've done here today, and I'm not sure if you acknowledge this, I know I'm involved in other podcasts, as are you, with regards to the doctor's lab that I'm doing, but what we're doing right here, and the fact that we've gone through and stuck with a framework, and we've challenged, we've looked, we've explored, and developed further frameworks within the religious context, that's pioneering itself. Because if we go back a decade, 2 decades, this would have been told, oh, you're using the tools of the non-believers, you're going down the route of academia, we're going to frown upon all of this. And as you said, Brother Nafis, we will weaponize that very topical slogan, Quran was Sunnah, Fahm of the Salaf, okay? And that just became sloganistic because we didn't see any embodiment of that except in the exterior, mainly exterior practice of the Muslim, okay? So now what we've done today and what we've done this episode is pioneering. That's the first thing I think we need to really to acknowledge. And then secondly, on the thing with regards to role models, another point I want to make, and you've all heard me speak on this before, it comes down to identity. And I think that we have been distracted from recognizing, as you said, Nafis, again, at the beginning of the show, we have met people amongst ourselves, amongst us. But because of superficial, sloganistic mantras, we've stuck with those mantras and distanced ourselves from those individuals who have embodied maturity, wisdom, knowledge. We've ostracized them. They're elders. They're proper elders in our community. I'm thinking of those from America that I met, mashallah, when I first came to Deen. They were in Medina and everything like this. So now we've also got to look at the role models coming from amongst ourselves also. Notice I'm saying also, because what we've done is we looked beyond our communities for people who didn't look like us, people who didn't relate to us, and then we tried to fit with who they were culturally, religiously, and everything else. Now, religiously, no problem if we're able to contextualize the religiosity of those individuals within our own community. But when we start taking on their culture, which is not a part of the religion, and I'll say it openly, we Arabize ourselves, we Asianify ourselves, we even I'm speaking with an English London, South London accent. You're speaking American, but if I'm speaking to you and I want to sound Arab, I want to sound like someone else. And even we had it in the UK, and maybe because the American black culture is that strong. We've got Brits speaking with American vernacular, like we have here in the Middle East. I'm speaking to Asians who've been raised in the Middle East. I'm speaking to Arabs who've been raised in the Middle East, and they're influenced by the American intonation. There's not a problem with that. But when you're doing that, adopting that, thinking that you are becoming closer to a role model by adopting or imitating in that particular way, this is not a platform of self-development. So I'll conclude on the point that I'm making here, because this is quite a deep conversation that I think we will take into the next seasons, inshallah, episodes. But we need to be able to identify those from among us who are like us. And I'm going to be clear here. That doesn't mean they just have to be African American or Afro-European, African Caribbean. They could be white Muslims living amongst us, having grown up with us, having been a part of our culture. They could be Asians who've grown up amongst us, have been part of our culture. But what we must make sure we don't do when we are seeking role models is the self-loathing and the lack of acknowledgement that among us as Black people, we can have role models. Because this transfers to Jahiliyyah before we became Muslims. We would not accept anyone as a leader or role model unless he was the baddest amongst us, the one who could bang the most, the one who's got the most bodies to his name, okay? The one who's made the most music or the most money, made the most money. They became role models, but in actuality, they weren't role models. We liked what they had and wanted what they had. When you admire a role model, we know there are reasons in the deen that you can admire someone. You can have a permissible type of envy for someone. The one with wealth gives in charity, and you wish that you could do likewise. The one who has knowledge and the Quran, and you want to recite and be able to act like he does. These are not the criteria amongst us, even as Muslims today. And so the role model, and I'll conclude on this point, because I'm emphasizing and re-emphasizing this point, because it's something that I think has limited us. The lack of acknowledgement of leaders in our community. And the opposite of that, the denigration, the marginalization, and the outright defamation of those who have the leadership qualities, have those characteristics that we can emulate and follow and strive towards. They are ostracized. And we have to look at the sunnah of the Anbiya and the ulama. Such individuals were always rejected by their communities. And is this something we have to take into consideration? Is it something we have to buck the trend of? Can we buck the trend in order to identify role models? And I'll stop there. I've gone on a bit, but it's a very important thing that you've highlighted, Brother Nafis. And I don't think we should move away from that, because this framework we're looking at cannot be actualized in totality until we achieve exactly what you said: role models, who they are, supporting them, leaders, supporting them.
I'm going to jump in here, and I'm actually going to push back a little bit on the role model piece. Okay. And my pushing back is not a negation of the value of role models, but I believe there's a higher value. And I'll explain what I mean. Firstly, when we speak to role models, I think we should keep in mind certain terms, like the term Rabbani, as we would hear Nafisa refer to previously. And interestingly enough, if we translate the word rabbi academically honestly, the word for that Rabbani is rabbi, right? That's the word for it in English, really, rabbi. But the Rabbani is a nurturer. The Rabbani is the individual that is not looking at their own stature, their own prowess, but they're looking at what the individual is in need of and giving the person what that person's need, what that person needs. So it's not about you and who you are and what you know and what you can do. It's about that individual, right? This is the Rabbani, right? Or the rabbi, right? And we have another term that we mention, and that term is imam. And by imam here, I mean imam in the religion. And when we speak to a person that is an imam in the religion, the meaning of that is that this individual is a qudwa, right? This individual has reached such a level in their understanding, in their practice of the faith, that they can be emulated in their understanding and practice of the faith, right? Um, Also, I believe that we should include in this the term mujaddid, and the term mujaddid it doesn't necessarily mean an individual per se, but it's a genre of person, or it's an archetype that brings about a religious revival, right? As we know, approximately every century or so, as we have just experienced the passing of many of those that fall under the category of mujaddid, the approximately 20 years ago or so. So we're in need of that, and that has value. And we need to be developing these types of role models within our communities, within our peoples, within our countries. No argument there, no contest. What I would further add, though, is that we have mobilizers and we have organizers. And when we have a mobilizer, often a mobilizer is an individual that has the ability to kind of rally the people or bring the people to a specific event in time. Okay. But then after the event it occurs, then that particular group dissipates, right? There's not much after that, or the group is just stagnant. It's just there, right? Um, Whereas an organizer puts something into place that is greater than the individual who is taken as the leader slash role model. And because the organization exists, the function of it can outlive that particular personality.
Right.
And others can come behind it who have benefited from that organization and then add further on to it. So, what I just want to add is, again, not a negation in the value of role models, because we need them. But more broadly, I think we need to be building toward organizations. We need to be organizing ourselves and building something greater, that a baton can be passed on for those who come after us, that can then build it into more for the further generations and appropriate it for the times that they're living in.
No, I think that that broader spectrum that you just laid out so well, brother, is actually a part of role model. So I think that on a broader scale, that's a form of role model. So instead of just looking at role modeling as one individual or one personality, you can look at it as from its organizational structure, whereas though an organization can actually become a role model. And they do, because actually they actually lead by example for other organizations to actually follow. And what you said before about being an imam, each one of us have a responsibility on a individual level to be a qudwa to others, right? And as we learn and apply the information, this is a part of the four-step processes. I mean, four-step process that we must have: educate ourselves from ignorance. Once we become educated, we have the knowledge, then what? We apply it. Then after we apply it, we call people to it. Then after we call, we remain patient upon it. All of that falls under, Surah Awesome. Those four stages that Ibn al-Qayyim said that you had the nafs, right? But he mentioned that the last stage where the sabr comes upon, he said the last stage is where you reach the stage of Rabbani. To me, I would say you reach the stage of maturity. So the answer to the question is, when will you Islamically mature? Is when you reach the age of being a cultivator, right? Shaykh Uthaymeen says a cultivator is a mu'allim. He has a form of Rabbani. If he's teaching correctly, and then he's one of those people who are cultivating others. So I do believe in that. But I wanted to touch on something real quick that Haq Baker was saying earlier. And that was some of the questions he was asking collectively with the community. I believe that that respect that we don't have for specific individuals or groups of people from ourselves is due to the fact that we're living in a time where respect for knowledge has been almost gone. Ihtiram al-ilm is important. The significance of respecting knowledge has been removed. The carriers of that knowledge, and this is not everybody, we'll exclude the people that Allah Jalla wa'ala has favored, but the carriers of that knowledge somehow have also diminished the respect of knowledge in the eyes of others. So when they witness people who are supposed to be the carriers of this knowledge not implementing that knowledge or not doing it, they are diminishing the status of that knowledge. Henceforth, when you get someone learned from amongst yourselves, we're not going to take from them. Henceforth, when you have an informational age where I can go pick anything up off the internet, I can pick anything up off of here and there, why would I listen to you? I can read one book. This is the type of the scholars call this stage what? The age of ta'alum, feigned knowledge. This is that time, and anybody can do it because this is the time that we live in. You can teach whatever you want to teach right now. Just go grab a book or whatever you want, and it's not fear regarding your teaching it, right? So I think that respect for knowledge is almost gone. And because we don't have that respect for knowledge, we can't demand from people to respect those people who are respected in front of our faces to take them as a equivalent. We can't.
What you said there, I think between you and Aqil is very important demarcations come up. I was just listening to both of you. As Aqil and we all agree, the Rabbani is more concerned in nurturing and imparting. And as you said, what's happened with the lack of respect for knowledge means that that's been prevented because those who are disrespecting the knowledge are calling to themselves. They now call to themselves. They do not call to knowledge. They're not concerned about nurturing others. They are calling to themselves, personalities. This is what we've seen. And it's in line with what you're saying, Brother Nafis, that this is the destruction, or let's say demise, that we are witnessing with regards to knowledge. So I think that what you've both said, again, everything that we're saying is interlinked. They're all encapsulated within each other. And I think it's important that we're identifying it in these discussions today as to where these gaps are, where the problems are. And we've spoken about solutions, but in recognizing these problems within the context of what we've been speaking about today, the whole season, to my knowledge, amongst our communities, this hasn't been done before.
No. Brother Aqil actually made that he had actually said that earlier before we even went live. He was talking about the if you don't mind me sharing that with the fact that the time of this show and the people right now, they might haven't caught up as of yet. So the topics we're talking about definitely, they're definitely trending topics. They're very, very engaging. But however, I just think, like I keep saying, I still think that you got to give it time. Over time, you got to let it filter. So when people go back and say, I looked at season 1 and I seen what you guys were discussing, you guys were spot on in some issues or in all issues. And I think that once that broader audience take to it, they will actually see it and begin to open that discussion even further amongst respective communities. That's one of the objectives of this show, so that we can offer some solutions, to other respective communities. And sometimes we always like to point the finger, but never at ourselves, right? And that's when you was talking about earlier about accountability. That taking of accountability is something that's integral in Islam. Recognizing your own flaws is something that's actually praiseworthy in Islam. It's encouraged. So you're supposed to look internally and not externally. But when we come up in the community, we always want to point our fingers. Either the masjid ain't doing something right, the imams ain't doing something right, the dua ain't doing something right, the scholars not doing something right, so forth ain't doing something right, but never what you didn't do right. You understand? So I think when you look in context of maturity, those things will not emanate from an individual or from a community collectively. You won't find them blaming others for their own responsibilities. You won't find it. And this is why when Sheikh Uthaymeen was explaining about hikmah, he says we have to recognize that hikmah is given from Allah. When you look at the verse I quoted earlier, Allah says, وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Right? Whoever has been given this hikmah has been given abundance of good. But before that, he tied it to his mashi'ah, his will. Sheikh Uthaymeen said, whenever you find Allah tying something to his will, you know that it's tied to what? Allah hikmatu baliqa, his comprehensive will, right? Allah connected that hikmah being there. And there are certain prerequisites or certain conditions that you must have in order to be someone who is wise. Allah says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ حِكْمَةً. And ishkura lillah. And indeed we gave you Luqman, who were the prophet, hikmah, right? And to be what? Thankful unto Allah. Because the mean says that that shukr is min al hikmah. Being thankful to Allah is from hikmah. Being appreciative to the Creator is from hikmah. Actually, it says Bala huwa ra'sul hikmah. Rather, it's the head of hikmah. It's at the top of it, right? And it's interestingly enough, because once you have matured, these things will already be in you. You will be eternally looking at yourself, your flaws. Do you understand? You won't be looking out searching for the flaws of others, right? You will be constantly having moist your tongue with astaghfirullah. You understand? These are the things we saw from the prophet. That's what I'm saying. These are all of the things we saw from this leader, this role model. All of the things I mentioned, you saw that. So when you reach that level of maturity, these things should emanate from you. I don't think we're there, bro. I think we got a long way to go to get to that actual stage of maturity, inshallah.
But as Aqil has said, I agree with you. I concur. We are at a very young stage in the West as Muslims upon the Sunnah, predominantly convert, and with some who've grown in Islam amongst us, but living as a minority in the West with such numbers and without the connection, the type of connection to the larger Muslim communities in the Muslim and Arab worlds like was previous. We are in an island. We are on an island surrounded by a sea that separated us from the larger Muslim populace that have existed for centuries in the Muslim and Arab lands and Muslim Arab world.
I would like to post up. Yeah, go ahead, dog.
Yeah, so that's what I would say.
I would like to post up. Yeah, my fault. I didn't cut you off. I would like to post up a question before we leave. Somebody has 2 questions in the comment section. I would like to get, so we can address them, and then hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, we can wrap this up for season 1. The first question is here. I'm gonna show it on the board for you guys.
This question here is from our dear brother, Chaplain Antigua, may Allah preserve you. Assalamu alaikum. How do we reconcile the ideal that hikmah is imparting knowledge at the right time, way, and place with the ahadith, with the prophetic traditions that warn us of the consequence of concealing knowledge when asked?
I'm gonna leave that to you, Aqil.
And then there were crickets, huh? Wa alaikum assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, the sin of concealing knowledge means that an individual withholds that knowledge from those who can benefit from it. And it does not mean that that knowledge is withheld from those who cannot benefit from it at that time, right? And one of the examples that we have in fearing the sin of concealing knowledge is the hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, may Allah be pleased with him, in the renowned hadith where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Mu'adh ibn Jabal, do you know what the right of Allah of the creation is, and the right of the creation over Allah? And he says, Allah and his messenger know best. And he goes on to explain, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes on to explain, and I'm summarizing for sake of time, Tawheed, monotheism, the effects and the benefits of monotheism. Hadiths in Bukhari and Muslim. And Mu'adh ibn Jabal asked, shall I inform the people of this? After that, Bashir and Nas. And the Prophet ﷺ states, La tubashirhum fiyattakilu. Don't inform them of this so that they then become reliant upon it. So then the Prophet ﷺ is telling him to not reveal that knowledge. Okay, not reveal that knowledge. So then Mu'adh ibn Jabal, this is how we get this particular prophetic tradition. He holds the hadith all the way until he's on his deathbed. And then he finally conveys this particular prophetic tradition out of the fear of his falling into the sin of concealing knowledge. right? But the point here is that the Prophet ﷺ told him to withhold it. Why? Because if that had been revealed at that time, when the people were still developing in their understanding of Iman, in their understanding of faith and monotheism, Tawheed, and Aqidah, and theology and spirituality, then perhaps they will understand, well, we are people of Tawheed, so we don't need to perform deeds anymore. When in fact, the proper understanding is, if you truly understand this, it will actually encourage you to do even more and strive even harder. So wait till the people get to this space before you convey it, right? So if that example helps at all, I believe that would be the answer to that question. And again,
That
just
was
to
nice.
reiterate, the sin of concealing knowledge is when you are withholding knowledge that the people are in need of.
No.
And concealing, the sin of concealing knowledge is not withholding knowledge that is not beneficial to the people at a particular time or place.
No, alhamdulillah, Aqil, you just answered that because that actually embodies, that hadith embodies the definition Ibn Qayyim gave for wisdom. So when Imam Atika asked that question, if you notice how the connection there, so
Absolutely.
at its proper time, you see how the Prophet ﷺ was using hikmah here. With
Mm.
that definition, you can see that it can be drawn out of there in his thing. I thank Allah Jalla wa'ala for allowing us to conclude season one. I know that you guys might have some more stuff to say, but I know we want to wrap up, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully, brothers and sisters, like I said, there's going to be some things we have left out that we didn't get to. We are all humans, no one knows more knowledge than Allah Jalla wa'ala. Kulli Dhul Ilmin Alim. Above every person endowed with knowledge is the all knower, is Allah Jalla wa'ala. So may Allah forgive us for any mistakes that we made. But these are interesting conversations. And like I said, for season two, Dr. Abdul Haq Baker is going to bring some more of his intellectual property to us, so we can go through it, inshallah ta'ala, dealing with some more framework, how we can actually build on top of the framework that we already talked about, so we can go into more discussions, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully we can take it back respectfully to our community. Now I want you to understand that there are two communities. There's the community of your home, then there's the community outside of your home, of your respective Muslim community, right? Henceforth, making the third community, which is the society you live in. So you have your home, which is initially your family, is your first community. Outside of that community, you have the masjid, the brothers, the sisters, the Ikhwan, and then outside of that, you have the community with you live in. All right. So I just want us to understand that this can apply to all three of those communities. The stuff that we were talking about can apply, but make sure it start with the first community, inshallah. Anything y'all brothers want to add before we close out?
I'm good.
You've concluded beautifully, mashallah. Jazakallah khair.
Mashallah. Inshallah, stay. Next week, there will not be a show. We're going to take a break, inshallah ta'ala, and come up with the next following week, inshallah, so that we can start season two right. Hopefully, we will be inviting people of different professions. So I'm going to be calling on my co-hosts. If you even know them to be non-believers, if they are in certain professions that you believe the discussions we're talking about, invite them. We will be inviting different people to come on, and you might say, well, that's kind of contradiction while we're talking about Muslim problems and we're bringing a non-believer. No, it's only from a professional point of view. And it's good to learn when you engage and have intellectual or academic discussions, because we can learn a lot from that, okay? This is your co-host. My other co-host is Nafis Abu Zaid.
This is your brother Aqil Ingram.
And this is your brother Abdul Haq Baker.
I thank you all for tuning into the Fajr Club. And may Allah Jalla wa'ala reward you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.